Look, girl, let loose, cause I know what you like. It's all on you if you wanna turn up the night.
That's right.
So many blunts in my mind, somewhere.
Man, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Tariq Elite Radio Show. My name is Mr. Tariq Elite, also known as King Flex, also known as Tariq Nasheed. Glad to have everybody tuning in to today's show. And we're going to chop up game and have a great time, as we do on every show. And we're going to get right into it. Today we're going to talk about this debate I had with a suspected female white supremacist. I'm going to play a clip from my Sunday's Ustream show. And I'm going to explain all of that good stuff and what it's about. And we're going to do all that after a very quick, and I mean very quick, commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. So you stay tuned right here on the Tariq Elite Radio Show. We'll be right back. Yo, you're checking out the brand new single by the homie T-Shock, and this one is called Gold Bars. And you can get this single right now at SoundCloud, you can get it at Pandora, and you can get it at tshocktheworld.com. Now, you heard of T-Shock in the hit movie The Eugenist. His songs were playing throughout the whole movie, so my man brings that heat. So don't forget, order your copy of Gold Bars right now at tshocktheworld.com.
Homeboy, stop it. Stop. 1,000-pound gorilla, no, you cannot get. No, and I plugged into your girl, that straight socket.
You are now tuning in to the King of Game, Tariq Elite on Tariq Elite Radio.
You better recognize.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Tariq Elite Radio Show, and I am Mr. Tariq Elite, ready to chop up good game with the family. How's everybody doing out there in Radio Land? Hey, people. Go to TariqElite.com, get my brand new Elite button-down dress shirts. I wore one on my Sunday's Ustream show. The ladies love the shirt. Everybody loving the new shirts. If you're ready to get suited and booted, go to TariqElite.com right now and get the brand new Tariq Elite button-down dress shirts. We designed the shirts to really bring out that fly-ism. The quality is real fly and crisp. The shirts are hot. So again, that's at TariqElite.com. And my brand new pay-per-view special is available now at TariqRadio.com. I have a pay-per-view special called Are We in a Post-Racial America? This is the full lecture I did recently at the University of Northern Colorado. The hot fire is scorching hot. People have seen a couple of clips from that lecture on YouTube. And they were bugging me like, hey, when is this whole thing going to be available? So it's available right now for immediate download. And that's at TariqRadio.com. Go to TariqRadio.com, look at the pay-per-view special button at the top of the page, and you can download that lecture in full and watch it right now, ladies and gentlemen. So on today's show, we're going to talk about the Donald Sterling situation, and I'm going to play a clip or a debate I had on my Ustream show this Sunday with a female suspected white supremacist. Now, before I go there, we all know that the whole Donald Sterling situation, who was the owner of the Clippers in Los Angeles, he made some racist statements in private. He was taped secretly by his Blaxican mistress. The tapes were leaked to TMZ, and there was a firestorm that happened. And yesterday, the NBA banned Donald Sterling for life from the NBA as an owner. I think they're going to force him to sell the team. I'm not sure how that's going to go down. And I know a lot of black people are running these little victory laps, and there are a lot of suspected white supremacists who are upset about this. Now, let me say this. We shouldn't run victory laps yet. This is just one piece of the puzzle. This is just one step. I think they did do the right thing, but just understand with Donald Sterling, just like other people in the dominant society, and I said this before, white people don't get fired, they just get transferred. Just let that sink in for a minute. This dude's a billionaire, so what are they going to really do? I mean, they banned him for life, but hell, he's 80-something years old. Life is, 5 years? This guy's going to croak at any moment. But they fined him like $2 million. That's not too much punishment for a dude like that. I mean, the guy probably wipes his ass with $2 million. He tricked that kind of money off on that Blaxican chick, Stiviano. So what's the real punishment here? So we can't run the victory laps yet. I mean, this is a great first step, but the real thing we need to be looking at, this should be a catalyst so that black people can start talking about owning their own team or their own league. We need to be talking about black ownership right now. That's the main thing. And I talked about this on Twitter, and the coon train came rolling. Now, there was some white supremacists who were hitting us up talking about, well, black ownership is racist. And even some black folks were saying, well, that's racist thinking. And then when I asked them, well, is the NBA racist? Because that's white owned. They started to filibuster and talk in circles. See, whenever you start talking about black ownership, black enfranchisement, black people getting themselves together financially as a group, people start trying to throw stones and deflate the conversation. That's a very common tactic, and this is why I'm playing this clip of me in the debate with the suspected female white supremacist today. That's why I'm playing this, because I'm not doing it just to show that I can shut down white supremacists when I'm debating them, or suspected white supremacists. I'm doing it to show black people how to not let other people detour you from your goal and your mission. Because what happens with a lot of black folks when we start talking about empowering ourselves, we not only get the coon train there, but we do get some suspected white supremacists who will try to detour you and throw salt in your game and talk you out of empowering yourself. So we got to know how to shut that down, because a lot of black folks I know, and there was a brother on my Facebook page talking about this the other day, asking me some questions about how to debate a suspected white supremacist female who was shutting him down with real weak arguments. He said he was debating with some white lady, and she told him that BET and the Soul Train Music Awards was racist because if white people did it, they would be considered racist. And he said, I ain't know what to say. I said, dude, really? You got shut down with that weak, jive-ass argument? That's a weak, bullshit talking point. BET is racist because it's a black television network. There are already white television networks. ABC, NBC, Fox, all of these are white television networks. They don't have to say white because it's so normal to have them now. And she knows that. But again, a lot of these people, they will choose certain black folks to debate because they know certain black folks don't know how to handle them verbally. And if you can't shut people down verbally and destroy and neutralize their arguments or their retorts verbally, you can't even motivate yourself to get out here and do anything. So you got to know how to handle people who are trying to throw salt into your momentum. But again, this whole thing with Donald Sterling, we shouldn't run the victory laps yet. We need to be talking about owning teams, owning leagues, so certain things like this won't continue to happen, because Donald Sterling was the only one who got caught out there like that. Don't think for a minute some of those other owners, and there's just other people who are within the dominant society, don't think that they don't have the same views as this guy. There's a reason why there's a lot of people in the dominant society who are taking up for the guy. Even the lady who's you're gonna hear in this interview, in this debate that I did, she was kind of trying to stick up for Donald Sterling to a certain degree. So there's a lot of people who think like this still, and this kind of shocks black people, because black people feel like, okay, we've kissed so much ass, we have ridden the coon train, we have buck danced, we've tap danced, we've been passive, we've done all this, and this is how they still feel about us. So that's kind of a tough pill to swallow for a lot of black folks. And I've never seen this type of passivity in all of my life with black people. Black people have been copping pleas about this Donald Sterling situation. It's sickening and it's saddening. The NAACP really embarrassed black people like a motherfucker. The NAACP, the LA chapter, came out making excuses. They had to give, they said they were going to give back a donation that Donald Sterling did, because they've been riding with Donald Sterling for a minute. Donald Sterling has been giving money to the NAACP and other little black organizations, and they were going to give Donald Sterling a Lifetime Achievement Award. So they had to publicly, say, hey, we can't give him the award. But one of the chapter leaders of the NAACP, a brother by the name of Leon Jenkins, I saw this interview by him, and I literally thought that it was a parody. I thought it was a joke. The interview, he was talking about, well, Donald Sterling, I know his heart. He ain't racist in his heart, and God told me to forgive. I mean, he's literally talking that type of plantation talk, that passive Samboism in this interview. I wouldn't be a Christian if I didn't forgive. Black folks got to stop this punctified, passive attitude when it comes to dealing with white supremacy. Being passive is not the answer. It's never been the answer. Just because somebody's passing you a couple of dollars, you're sitting up with your butt cheeks open making excuses for them. That's not the business. That's not the business. And even a lot of people were saying, well, these athletes, they got to feed their families, and they shouldn't boycott the team, or they shouldn't walk off because they got to feed their families. See, that whole feed your family argument, that just shows that any black person can be bought. We got to get off that mentality where we can be bought at any given moment. We got to cut that shit out, because sometimes all money ain't good money, and we keep compromising our integrity for a couple of dollars and nigga trinkets. And we got to get out of that mentality. But again, this whole situation is very interesting. I even heard that the lady in question, V. Stiviano, the lady who was Donald Sterling's mistress, they said she might be getting a book deal, which I don't doubt, which is cool. And again, shout out to her for having a crisp mouthpiece. Not that she's a person who's down for the cause, but she did a smart hustle move, and I respect that in her. This is why your game has to be crisp, and that's why she got that dude. Understand this. This V. Stiviano chick, she's not no really dime chick. She didn't get Donald Sterling because she was some bomb-ass chick. I mean, truth be told, V. Stiviano, she's like an LA 7. Let's be very clear on that. I think a lot of people in other cities, they see this female and they think she's all exotic and fly. Niggas can get women like that on Melrose at any given moment in LA. We know that out here. Brothers in LA can go to the Beverly Center and get 20 females finer than V. Stiviano. She's like an LA 7, and I'm being very liberal with that 7. Because when you take a real good look at her, I mean, she's not really no bomb chick. Her skin is a little janky. Her grill is a little, kind of got a buck tooth grill a little bit. She got some miles on her. She got them old Harriet Tubman hands. I'm not shitting on her, by the way. I'm not saying she's a bad looking chick, but she's just not no real bomb ass LA chick. But I say that not to disparage her. I just say that because her game compensates for her not being no real dime chick. She does have a mouthpiece on her. She got game, and she gamed old dude up. When I was listening to the tape, I can hear the game she was spitting. Is there something I can do to make it better, honey? I mean, she was spitting some real good shit at that dude. And again, she's not no bomb chick because she's doing, they got her walking around with she's walking around with like this visor covering up her face. And it was like a weird interview she did the other day where the paparazzi, they were outside her home and she was roller skating in her driveway with this visor on her face, and she had a bodyguard. walking her dog and she's roller skating and she's attention whoring, and she's covering her face not because she don't want the publicity. She wants the publicity. She just don't want people to see what she really looks like without all those Instagram filters. Because all the images we see of her are those Instagram pictures where it's really heavily filtered. Y'all take a good look at what she looks like without those Instagram filters. Take a good look at what she looks like, and you'll see why she's covering her face up. But I digress as far as that. But it's very interesting that a lot of people are just upset because you don't understand white supremacy. A lot of people think that white supremacy is this aggressive thing where people are hating you and hating on you. And a white supremacist can be all up around you, going to your award shows, getting awards from you, giving you money. And they'll still look at you like you're inferior as a black person. And that's exactly how Donald Sterling was. All day white supremacist. Now, some people are using this argument, especially other white supremacists and suspected white supremacists, are saying, and let me explain, a white supremacist is a person in the white society who feels that they're superior over black people, and they put that belief into practice. That's what a white supremacist is. A white supremacist is not a Klan member or a skinhead. That's just an extremist. But a white supremacist is any white person who thinks that or believes that they are superior over black people. That makes you a white supremacist. All white people are not white supremacists, but we do have white supremacists, and that's what I mean by white supremacists. We got to be very clear on these terms, and I explain that in this debate that you're going to hear in a second. But the thing is, a lot of people who are sympathetic to Donald Sterling, they're saying stuff like, well, that's unfair what happened to him. He should not have been fired based on a private conversation. They're using the whole private conversation thing. And a lot of the white supremacists are coming out saying this is setting a dangerous precedent where you can punish somebody based on what they say in their own home and their own privacy. Stop right there. Stop right there. Because when football player Deshaun Jackson, who's clean and as a whistle, this brother's squeaky clean. Brother ain't have a jail record, nothing. This is the model student. Deshaun Jackson was released from the Eagles based on who he knew privately. Y'all remember that? Not too long ago, a month or two ago. Deshaun Jackson was released from the Philadelphia Eagles based on some gang members he knew privately. Deshaun Jackson never gangbanged, never had a criminal record or nothing, but he knew some people in his private life. He just knew some people who were in a gang or suspected to be in a gang. And then they fired him based on people he knew privately. So if we're going to let that slide, Donald Sterling's ass should be banned too. We can't have no double standards. See, that's the thing. When you put racialized public policies out there, sometimes they end up biting you in the ass too. So you got to be very careful when you practice your white supremacy. That's why you should eliminate white supremacist public policies and just have a system of justice. Because these things always get you and bite you in the ass too. So I'm not trying to hear that it was a private conversation matter, because y'all get us on private issues all the time and who we associate with, like Deshaun Jackson. Of course, if you grew up in South Central, yeah, you're going to know a gang member or two. That's a given. You're going to know somebody who was in a damn gang. You shouldn't be punished based on who you know privately. So zero fucks are giving about that whole conversation as far as Donald Sterling. He got what was rightfully deserved. Because this guy was a well-known white supremacist. He was very discriminatory in his practices. And a lot of people are now looking at the wife. I saw an article on Yahoo talking about, the poor wife. The poor wife who's caught up in the middle of this. Donald Sterling's wife. Let me tell you something. I suspect her of being just as much as a white supremacist as Donald Sterling. I suspect her of being just as much of a white supremacist as Donald Sterling. The female white supremacist or the female suspected white supremacists, they've gotten a pass in our society. And you have to understand how white supremacy works. White supremacy depends on the female white supremacists. See, that's the good cop and the bad cop phenomenon. Because what happens is that a lot of times the female white supremacists are sent into black areas first to feel things out. They're sent in as the missionaries. They're sent in to kind of feel people out. They go in there like the savior to get intel. And then they feed things back to the male white supremacists, and then they work with each other to suppress black people. Am I talking about all? Absolutely not. All white people are not white supremacists. There are a lot of cool white people out there who are definitely fair and just. I know many myself. I know for a fact that all white people are not white supremacists. But the ones who are white supremacists are very dangerous. And they affect our lives adversely. And we have to know who they are, and we have to be very cognizant of that game. Because the female suspected white supremacist, that's the sneaky one. That's the person who's teaching your kids at school. That's the person who's on the Trayvon Martin jury or the Jordan Davis jury. You dig? And with the female white supremacists or the suspected female white supremacists, just because they're not being mean does not mean that they're not practicing white supremacy. Just because they're laying up with you does not mean that they're not practicing white supremacy. Just because they're giving you things and being nice and donating things to you, you think, oh, she's a cool one. That person can still be practicing white supremacy. So we got to be very aware of that. So we're going to get into this debate I had with this female. Her name is Louise. Her name is Louise. I was on Ustream doing my live Ustream show, and she happened to call up. And she was somewhat sympathetic to Donald Sterling to a certain degree, because I was talking like I was talking now. She got a little offended, and that's why she called up. So you're going to hear the interview, and I'm going to play the whole thing in its entirety, and then I will chime in a little bit more after this debate. So here it is right here. The debate between me and a suspected female white supremacist. Okay, now, what is go ahead. Now, what's your name?
You were waiting for Monday, your talk.
Now,
I just wanted to say that I'm white, and I've been listening to your program.
Now, what's your name? Wait. What's your name, ma'am?
Louise.
Louise, where are you calling from?
Michigan.
Okay, so what's on your mind? Now, are you bunchy? Are you bunchy?
No.
Okay, so what's on your mind? You sound upset.
I'm a white woman. How can I be him?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, Louise. Then what's on your mind?
What's on my mind is you sadden me. I feel like you're part of the problem.
How so?
Well, you're talking about, you're calling black people coons. You're talking about white people always being negative about black people.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. As a matter of fact, I said that all white people are not racist. I've said that repeatedly. Did you not hear that, ma'am?
You may say that, but it's not in how you express yourself.
I express myself very clearly. I didn't say that all white people are mean. And I specify the type of white people that I talk about, which are the white supremacists. I never paint everybody with a broad brush. I'm very specific about the people I talk about.
You know, I just feel that you really truly, it's very frustrating as a white person who, you know, like you say that we say, I have a white friend, or
Right.
I date a black man. And then we say, I don't see color. When you love all people, you don't see color.
Right.
You don't see black. You don't see white. You don't see Chinese. You just love people. You're a human being.
You do see a color. When you see somebody, you see what they are. You can tell a person is Chinese, black, or white. You only see that you don't see color when it comes to black people. You never hear that when it comes to anybody else but black people. When y'all talk about that black friend, all of a sudden I don't see color. But you see the color and you see what everybody else looks like, and you have no problem acknowledging that. No, it's not hogwash, ma'am. It's not hogwash.
There's your problem. You cannot accept that people can truly just love people.
Of course they can. I never said that. So what are you talking about?
Just what I said to you.
Now, what you're doing now, wait. What you're doing now, you're making up an argument and you're getting upset with your own argument, ma'am. So I want you to deal with my words. I never said you can't love nobody. I never said any of that. So what you're going to have to do is really direct what I said and tell me what you feel about what I said, not what you're interpreting what I said. Because now you're filtering it and interpreting what I'm saying the way you want to interpret it. I never said anything about you can't love somebody. I never said any of that. And I'm not going to defend on myself on something that's going on in your imagination that I didn't say. What problem do you have with what I said? Louise, I'm here, Louise. What problem do you have with what I said? Not your interpretation, ma'am. What I said. What problem do you have?
You're talking about white supremacists.
Right. Which is, do you believe white supremacy exists?
Oh, of course I do.
All right.
It's disgusting.
Absolutely. So what's the problem you have with that? With me talking about that? What's the problem you have with that, ma'am?
It's the things that you talk about that you're I don't know how to explain it to you, but you're extraordinarily how do I say this? I want to use words that like you're hateful. You're shout out to No Sleep.
I'm hateful to who?
You know, it's like reverse discrimination.
Oh Lord. Really?
I was listening.
Ma'am, wait, ma'am. Oh, reverse discrimination?
Yeah.
So are you saying that I'm practicing reverse discrimination?
Like, white people can't use negative or derogatory words towards black people, but black people can towards white people.
Ma'am, are you trying to say there's something called black supremacy? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm trying to say that black people are just as negative about white people as white people are about black people.
But you still get the loan. You still get the job. Your schools don't get gentrified, ma'am. Black so-called racism or black supremacy is only relegated to name calling, ma'am. So please let's not make black name calling comparative to systematic white racism that has existed in this country for hundreds of years.
You know, where you're so wrong.
Please correct me, ma'am.
I'm white. I don't get the job. You know what I had to do? I had to create my job. I had to open up a store because I couldn't get hired. I'm a white woman.
Ma'am.
And
just because you didn't get it don't mean that it's not there. Ma'am, just because you didn't get it doesn't mean it's not there for you. Just because you didn't get it doesn't mean it's not there for you. There is not one black person that can prevent you from getting a job anywhere, ma'am. Let's be very realistic.
No, stop. Time out. I didn't say that there was a black person that's stopping me from getting a job.
But when you say there's comparative racism coming from black people, that is what you're saying. There is no comparative racism coming from black people that's equal to white supremacy. Are you trying to say that, ma'am? Because like I said, black racism is just calling names, which isn't racism at all. That's just bigotry.
You know, I'm just going to have to say this, is that you keep twisting what I'm trying to say to you. And that's
Louise, I'm listening to you. Louise, your voice is live on my show. I'm not twisting anything you're saying. Louise, you can say anything you want to say. But the thing is, I don't want you to say I said something that I didn't say. You said, you think people shouldn't love each other because that's where I have to stop you. Because you can't just make up something I said to argue with that. I want you to deal with what I say. Go ahead.
You're saying, you're talking about you're talking about black women who are with white men, and that, and you're calling them, I mean, as if they're the white men that they're with are their masters.
Ma'am, have you heard?
What?
Have you heard Donald Sterling's tape, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
That sounds like a scene from Django. Okay, it sounds like a scene from a slave movie. It's 2014. And you have black women who are dating white men, not in all cases, but you're dating a white dude who's talking to you like a slave wench in 2014. That's a problem, ma'am. Hello?
I'm just going to say, this is what I'm going to say about this gentleman. Okay? And this is just what I'm going to say.
What's really on? Because what you're trying to do, ma'am, you're trying to filter a lot of what you're saying. Just say what's on your mind. Ma'am.
He said it was his culture.
Right.
He tried to explain to the woman that he was raised in a different society. Instead of completely crucifying the man, I'm not saying that he's right in everything that he says, but let's give the man some sort of kudos that he has tried to change.
Louise.
He was raised in a totally different lifestyle than you and I were raised in.
Louise. This is the problem with white supremacy right here, Louise. People, unfortunately, like yourself, ma'am, you give blatant white supremacy a pass. You try to make excuses for blatant white supremacy. You're trying to make excuses for Donald Sterling, ma'am. What he said was inexcusable.
No, I'm not.
Ma'am, you're saying we should give him kudos. We should give him kudos for trying to.
You've got to admit he was set up by her. Number one.
Yes.
Number two.
And yes, does that negate the validity of what he was saying? Of course he was set up. He said those words though, ma'am.
Of course he did. He did say those words, but come on. You're in, I just don't see him as, I guess maybe, how do I say this? I don't see him as a slave master.
You don't?
I see him as a man that fell in love with a woman, sincerely fell in love with her.
Ma'am, did you not hear him say, I give my blacks cars, I give them homes, they should be happy. I give them a place to live. That's what slave masters would say. So are you trying to say, ma'am, Louise, are you trying to say that you really don't believe that Donald Sterling is a white supremacist?
I don't know enough about Mr. Sterling to be able to say that.
You heard his words.
I didn't hear that.
You heard.
I heard you say that. I didn't hear that in the tape.
Well, that's what white supremacy is. When you are saying that you are better than a race of people based on you being white, that's what makes you a white supremacist, man. Did
he say those exact words, or are you putting words in his mouth?
Let me tell you exactly what he said. She asked him, are white Jews better than black Jews? His answer, ma'am, was yes, 100% they are. Those are his words. So this is not even a question. He said it out of his, not just him saying it, ma'am. He practices white supremacy. Because, see, this goes beyond just him saying words. There was a case for Donald Sterling years ago where he had a housing discrimination case where it was known that he discriminated against black tenants. And he had to make a payout, a federal payout for housing discrimination. So this man has a track record of discriminatory white supremacist practices, not just name calling, but practices where he has disenfranchised the lives of black people. Do you see that as a problem, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
All right. That's all we're trying to say. So what problem do you have with me for pointing that out, ma'am?
It's not that you're pointing out possibly facts. It's the way that you say it.
Oh, really? Okay. So what don't you like about the way I'm saying it?
I just feel as if you're awfully negative against white people, that you don't see that there are good white people.
Ma'am,
that there are
I never
good
said
black
that.
people, there are Chinese people.
Ma'am, I do business with white people. I'm not negative. I never said anything negative about white people in general. I've said over and over, all white people are not racist, ma'am. I've been pointing out the white supremacists. Whenever I have a problem with a white person, I point out a white supremacist. That's the only type of white person I have a problem with. Any white person who actively practices white supremacy. I should have a problem with that, ma'am, because white supremacy affects my life and the lives of other black people. White supremacy is very unjust. That's a system of injustice. So I can't talk nice about a system of injustice. Would you talk nice and say things in a nice way about a system of injustice?
No, and maybe I should listen to your program more often.
Right.
What?
Louise, who is that in the back? Your husband or your son?
My boyfriend, who is black, who is wants me to tell you that he's posting on Coley.
You got a black boy. I'm done. You got a black boyfriend. Oh God. Oh.
Excuse me, and what is so funny about that? I was married for 25 years to a black man.
Oh God.
I had a child with him whom we lost to cancer.
Oh God. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't want that's not cool. But your boyfriend.
Why does that seem funny to you?
How does your boyfriend feel about what I'm saying?
James, you want
He did what? James. So you got a black boyfriend. I'm thinking that, okay. And I've always said this, because I don't want to say that you're a suspected white supremacist, but the fact that you will coddle certain white supremacists is very suspect, ma'am. That's very suspect, the fact that you would try to protect.
There's your problem, the twisting.
No, those are your words, ma'am. Your words, you were like, well, we got to give kudos to Donald Sterling.
You see that people can love people for just who they are and what they are.
You can. I never said
Therefore,
that.
I have to now be suspect.
Because you're protecting and you're trying to speak up and make excuses for a blatant white supremacist. So
no, I'm not making. I told you that I disagreed with white supremacy.
But you were kind of agreeing with Donald Sterling. You said, well, he was set up. You said he was, your words, he was set up. We got to give him kudos. Those are your words.
I did say that. He comes from I'm not saying that he's right. There's the fine line. But I'm saying that he comes from unfortunately, you and I know this, he comes from a different culture. He comes from a different era. Look, I'm not saying it's the right way.
Ma'am.
I'm just saying that it has affected him. And I feel like, not that he's right, but I feel like he has made changes.
Ma'am, are you trying to blame his blatant white supremacist mindset on him being old? Are you using well, he's old, so he gets a white supremacist pass? Is that the excuse you're trying to use?
Well, I was listening to a black comedian just today, and he was making jokes about older black men that really hate white people, and the whole black crowd was laughing at it. And how when they're to their faces, they're very kind, and they're to white faces, and then when they walk away, they start, I'm not going to use the words that he was using, but that they're cursing, and I was laughing at it too.
But look, but you're doing another. That's what white supremacists do, Louise. They'll listen to one comedy routine. You'll see one black person, and that's supposed to represent the whole black community. Just because a comedian says that, y'all do that. Y'all base all your views on black folks based on what one or two people say about black folks. Why are you bringing up what a comedian says? What does that have to do with the whole black community?
Because he was pointing out exactly what I'm pointing out to you. If you run into an elderly black man, he just used it as a joke. And it's
because
not a
most
joke,
old
but
black people don't hate white people. That's a lie, by the way. Most elderly white people are still kissing white people's asses to this day. They don't hate no white people. Let's be very realistic. And even if they did, they can't do anything to affect their lives. So let's just be realistic. That's a moot point anyway. They can't affect the lives of any kind of white person. But Donald can. But Donald can't afford. I don't care how old he is. He's affecting the lives of people now. All right? I don't give a damn how old he is. He's just been practicing white supremacy longer than some of the younger white supremacists. He don't get a pass for being old. And that's another cop-out. And that's the problem. People keep making excuses for white supremacy. It's unjust. I don't give a damn if you practice it back in the day. You wouldn't give an old Nazi a pass. You wouldn't say, oh, he was just a Nazi. You got to understand, they came from Germany back in the 1940s. That's just how they were. They still put those Nazis on trial. They put those Nazis on trial now. If they find one that's 110 years old, his ass is going to trial. They're not giving Nazis a pass. So you try to give white supremacists a pass, and that's a problem right there.
Okay, no, I'm not. And number one, what I'm trying to say is hatred. Hatred on the black side for the older culture and hatred on the white side is just as offensive, but it's on both sides.
We ain't talking about who's offending anybody. You're just talking about name calling and offensiveness. We're talking about a system. You keep trying to compare a system of white supremacy to name calling, which is nothing. Being offended, being uncomfortable. It's not the same, Louise. Do you understand that?
Do you truly believe that, and I'm just asking this in sincerity, do you truly believe that all the white people are against black people? Because that's the way you sound.
No, you keep saying the way I sound and the way you're insinuating I'm saying. I have not said one word about all white people hating black people. I've said nothing close to that. But you keep filtering that through your mind in order to justify.
What are you talking about? Why are you calling it a white
I've never said that all white people are racist. They're not. I know they're not. All white people are not racist. You keep saying that is not going to make it true. I've not said that whatsoever. But white supremacy does exist. And white supremacy is a problem in this country, and it affects people's lives who are people of color like myself. Does that make sense?
Of course it does.
So why are you acting like I'm saying something else that's confusing? You're trying to be confused. I've been very specific about what I said, ma'am. I haven't said anything that's confusing, anything that could be left to insinuation. I've been very specific about what I'm saying. But you keep saying, well, you're just making it seem like nobody can love another person. No, ma'am. I'm very specific about what I'm saying. So what's
I'm very specific about the fact of what I shared with you, and you started laughing, thinking that it was funny.
It was funny to find out you had a black boyfriend. That was funny, because I tell black people all the time, just because a person is having sex with you, don't think that they don't still have some white supremacist views. And it sounds like you have some suspected white supremacist views, Louise.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm righteous.
I know you're not.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't, but it has nothing to do with color. It has to do with how certain people live their lives.
I want black people to listen to you, and I want brothers to listen. People think that if I dick this white woman down, I'm going to really switch her over. You can have sex with white women until you're blue in the face, and they will still have a camaraderie with the dominant society and with some sectors of white supremacy. So this is a great lesson that black people need to learn. And it goes both ways. I talked about how just because a white dude is having sex with a black woman, that don't mean that he's not a white supremacist. And it goes both ways. Brothers get on this thing where white lady's laying up with you. You don't think she won't get up out that bed and practice white supremacy? You got another thing coming.
Now I'm a white supremacist.
I said you're suspected. You're not one. I don't know if you are for sure. I don't know you. You're suspected. You're a suspect white supremacist, ma'am, because I don't know for sure. So I got to put you in the suspect category, because the thing is, Louise, what do you do for a living, ma'am?
I had to, because I couldn't get a job, I opened up a store.
There you go. And how did you open up that store? Where'd you get the money?
I didn't have money. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to sit here. I didn't have money.
Okay. It matters, but I feel you. It matters, Louise, but I feel you. You see, because you don't want to turn it. You're not turning in that white supremacy card because you know you can get goodies and you can get certain things with that white card. Not that I don't know if you're white supremacist or not, ma'am. I'm not saying you're white supremacist or not. That's why I said suspect. But that white privilege card, you got that. And you know you got it. So this is why you can kind of protect certain people who have certain white supremacist views because you know the value, even if you don't have a job, you still got that privilege to hook up with somebody who can give you money to even start a business. See, that's white privilege. And it is what it is. This is why we have to dialogue about it. And we got to be very honest about racism and white supremacy and white privilege. We got to talk realistically about race. And my thing is this. I don't worry about people getting offended because you're like, I don't like the way you're saying stuff. Well, I don't like white supremacy. White supremacy makes me uncomfortable. You being uncomfortable with the words, you'll get over it. I have black children. I don't want my black children having to go to school with a person who kind of thinks like you, Louise, or a person who's being taught, or a teacher. I don't want a teacher, Louise, I don't want a teacher who kind of has your views teaching my kids. Because you'll slip that bullshit in them. You'll slip that into the curriculum, man.
If I had listened to the white people, I never would have married my husband. If I had listened to the white people,
right,
I never would have told my child because I was taken aside and told that my child, because she would be mulatto or he would be mulatto, wouldn't be accepted in society, and how cruel I would be if I had a child.
I know what they tell you. Trust me, I know the whole conversation your family had. I know, because you got some white supremacists in your family. And that's another thing, because that's why you don't really want to point the finger at white supremacy, because then you're going to have to point it at mom and dad. And that's a hell of a thing to do, because you know how mom and dad, know how they felt about you getting with that brother. You know some of the words they said.
They were not happy. But you know what? They did change. They were not happy. They tried to stop the marriage. I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't have the negative influence in my life that way. I did.
I know.
But you know what? The whole point is that it was more important that the person that I was with was a worthy person, was a wonderful person, was an incredible man. He was intelligent. He was wonderful. He was a fantastic father.
Absolutely. I believe that.
That's the things that were important. It didn't matter what anybody said to me. It was who that person was.
Right. Right, but again, I get that. But the thing is, the reason why you almost sounded like you were making excuses for Donald Sterling. You were giving him the benefit of the doubt to a certain degree. And you know why you were doing that, Louise? Because Donald Sterling represents your dad. Your dad is Donald Sterling. He has he has the same views. You heard some of that same stuff in your household. And that's why you're not so quick to throw him under the bus, because it's like throwing your parents under the bus. And this is a dialogue that we have to talk about. Because if you are a person in the white society and you are not a white supremacist yourself, but then you're surrounded by white supremacists, what do you do? So that's a dialogue that we need to have in this country. We really got to have that dialogue. But this whole thing where black folks can't talk about it, I'm talking about it because that shit is unjust.
Time out. My father and my mother always had taught me, and hear what I'm just about to share.
I want to hear this. I want to hear this. I'm dying to hear this, Louise.
They taught me that I should not discriminate. They taught me to love all people. They taught me that.
But
then the difference. No, let me finish. The difference was, I truly believed that. Thank God they raised me that way with an open mind. But here's the difference. When I took it to the point of dating someone and marrying someone, that's when, if you want to call it white supremacy,
exactly.
The line change.
Are your family? Well, let me ask you this. Are your parents liberals? They're like Democrats.
They voted both ways.
Okay, so one voted.
It depended upon the candidate.
Okay, but you would consider them liberal for the most part. If they, they wanted you to have friends and they didn't care what you did and all that. Did you grow up have a liberal background?
I had a very firm father who definitely had a course of how he wanted his children to be raised and behave.
Right. But the thing is, that's how white supremacy works. See, people think that a white supremacist, you don't want anything to do with no black people and all. A white supremacist, they don't have a problem interacting with black people as long as the black person is in an inferior position. The minute you date or lay up with, now you're equal. The minute you move next door to a black person or they move next door to you, now it's equal. That's where the white supremacy comes in, because we don't want that. And if you think like that, that makes you a white supremacist, ma'am.
Then I would have to agree with you. If you want to use the term white supremacist, I don't like that terminology.
I know you don't. You know why you don't like it? You know why you don't like it? Because you know why you don't like it? Louise, stop. Louise, you got to stop talking, sister. You know why you don't like that term? Is that because the term, it's accusatory. And it puts the blame where the blame should be. Because the term racism, which I don't like to use, racism gives people an out. They can distance themselves from that. People play games with the word racism. People try to pretend that, well, racism is the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not that. Racism, well, black people are racist. Al Sharpton is racist. So people pretend that racism is just this formless entity that nobody knows what it is. But when you say exactly what racism is and the problem with racism, which is systematic white supremacy, now you're putting it somewhere. You're putting the racism right where it's supposed to be, because that's the problem we have with racism, not because anybody's calling names. We have a problem with the systematic practice of white supremacy. That's the problem we have in this country.
No, I guess I would have to. I have to agree with you, because there was no one more shocked than myself when I brought before we were married, I brought him home and he asked my father for my hand in marriage. Okay,
mm-hmm.
And there was nobody more shocked than myself because of the way that I was raised.
Right.
And again, I thank God that my parents at least raised me that way. But yet I agree with you. You're right. It changed when their daughter was going to be with a black man.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you on that. And I saw that. And it disappointed me in my parents.
I can imagine.
I can't change that, but I fell in love with a fantastic person.
Absolutely. So, does your family, have they disowned you?
They did initially.
Right.
They did initially.
Right.
They told my then fiance that he would never be welcome at home.
Mm-hmm.
If I had children, they would never be welcome at home.
Mm-hmm.
And my then fiance sat at the table, and I have to give him absolutely all the credit in the world for his strength and his pride in knowing who and what he was as a man. He looked at my father and he said, "You can discriminate against me. You can keep me away from your home. The only thing I'm asking you is do not cut yourself off from your daughter. She loves you. She needs you. I can live without you."
Mm-hmm. So y'all patch things up with the family, yeah?
We just lived our lives.
Okay.
And then unfortunately, my daughter had a brain tumor, and my parents came to my husband and I and apologized and said that a child taught them how stupid they were as people. She had taught them about the real meaning of love, that they were so sorry for the way that they behaved, that this child had educated them more than anything because of her illness and how much they loved her as an individual, and they apologized for their behavior.
And this is why it's so very important. This country has never tackled the issue of white supremacy ever on a national level. And the sickness of it, where people have disowned their families, and this whole dynamic that's been going on for decade after decade after decade, that's never openly discussed on the national level. And it's a cancer that nobody wants to talk about. When we talk about race, it's always, well, the black folks are the problem, and Al Sharpton. It's all of this deflection. And there's suffering going on in these white homes with white supremacy. This shit is cancerous. It gives privileges and benefits on one end, but it eats you up on another end. And that's something that really has to be discussed in this country. And we got to be brave enough to talk about it and not sweeping that shit under the rug. And then when black people like me, who are not afraid, because I don't give a damn about nobody being offended, a lot of black people don't want to talk about it because they'll get the reaction that you gave. I'm offended by what you're saying, and you get a whole bunch of that. That scares black folks. I'm not scared of that because I can handle that. But we do need to talk about white supremacy, not just racism, specifically white supremacy, and get to the root of it so we can move on from it. If we're going to move on and stop pretending that we're post-racial, and then we have a Donald Sterling and a Cliven Bundy pop out shocking the world, which you shouldn't really be shocked. You feel me?
I understand. I do appreciate the fact that what he did was, what he said, maybe I am making excuses, I don't know, okay? Mm-hmm. I don't feel that everything that he said was completely, totally wrong.
That's your dad. You're talking about Donald Sterling, right?
Yeah, because I don't know enough about the man to sit here and say. I'm not saying what
Louise, a person saying that black people are beneath white Jewish people, that's wrong, ma'am. There's no way to really filter that. That's wrong. What you heard on that tape of him saying, I don't want black people coming to my games, is that wrong or not?
That's disgusting.
Of course. I don't know why I don't know if it's wrong. I mean, damn, it's pretty cut and dry. He didn't really beat around the bush. The views this man had were horrible. Him telling a woman if she can not be so black and act more like a white girl, that's horrible. That's not just this, that's horrible. There's no excuses for that. And when you try to make excuses or try to rationalize that, then people are going to look at you as being a suspected white supremacist. And then you say, well, why are you black people looking at us, all white people, as being racist? Because when you co-sign that, that's a bad look. See, black people, if a black person does something fucked up, we'll hey, he's fucked up. He don't represent me. We'll be the first to say it. But when you have the Donald Sterlings of the world out here regurgitating all of this hateful venom, people in the dominant society, they have a tendency to kind of protect this guy. And that's a problem. And if you're going to protect dudes like that in any way, just be ready to be suspected of being a white supremacist yourself. You feel me?
How about just someone who can simply forgive and just feel, I'm not saying I forgive him for his wrong, I don't know how to express what I want to express. That's okay.
That's okay. All right, but hey, I got to get some other calls, but thank you so much, Louise. So anyway, that was the debate that I had with Louise, the female suspected white supremacist. And I hope you guys learned some very important and very valuable things here. As you saw and as you heard, not only can a person in the dominant society be nice to you, they can lay up with you and still practice systematic white supremacy and still think just like other white supremacists. And this is the trick that is played on black people. You think just because you laying up with somebody that they won't get up out of that bed and practice systematic white supremacy against you, and that's been a big con game. Black people have to understand suspected white supremacists come in all shapes and forms, and you better identify who you're dealing with and not let that affect you adversely. And always think in terms of empowering yourself. We still need to empower ourselves. Because even when this person is laying up with you, they got your balls in their hand and they stroking you off and doing whatever, they get up out of that bed and they practice group economics with their own society. They still know the importance of empowering their society, even after they done bust up in you and you bust up in them and you done spread them cheeks, they still know better to get up and get on over to their community and do things and empower their community. They're not giving up their power in their community at all. They don't care how many times they done put your prick up in their throat. They're still going to empower their own community, and black people got to think the same way. The minute a black man or black woman gets to lay up with a white man or a white woman, all of a sudden we done gave up every ounce of power we have. We don't feel like we have to practice group economics. We don't feel like we have to build a community. We don't feel like we have to do shit. All of a sudden we think we're the Benetton ad people. We think we're the Kumbaya people. We think that we just got to give that up and everything is some big old happy utopia, and it's just not the reality. All groups of people look out for their group, and they're going to empower their group except us. We got to empower ourselves. Now, I'm not saying you can't lay up with who you lay up with. You knock yourself out. Lay up with who you want to lay up with, but get up and empower yourself. Empower your community. If you're laying up with people to run away from yourself, that's not going to happen. You can't run away from yourself, family. Empowering yourself economically, you just can't get around that. You keep trying to tiptoe and dance around that, black folks are going to have to empower themselves economically. This is the only way we're going to overcome the Sterlings and the Clive and Bundys and all of the white supremacists. We have to empower ourselves economically. That's going to protect ourselves. We just can't be vulnerable and at the whim of every suspected white supremacist out here on the planet. Because when you're vulnerable and broke and you don't have an economic base or a protection base, you'll do anything for money. This is why we got our asses open for anybody who has a check, because we don't have an economic base to pay ourselves. So just think about that. We got to get our money up. We got to get our ownership game up. There's no way around that, family. That's the bottom line. So let's cut out the goddamn victory laps. We run the victory laps when we get a black-owned league again. We did it before, we can do it again. And this is how you shut down the white supremacists who try to talk down on that, because that's a given. We're so upset about making those in the dominant society uncomfortable, we'll just give all of our own empowerment up just so we don't make them comfortable. Just so we don't make them uncomfortable. We got to get out of that mentality. Anyway, y'all, that's been today's episode of the Tariq Elite Show. Go to TariqElite.com. Get my brand new shirts at TariqElite.com right now. Get them right now, family. And also get the brand new pay-per-view special called Are We in a Post-Racial America? That's available for immediate download at TariqRadio.com. I'm going to holler at you on Ustream this Sunday. Peace.